Right, so here's our first project using the cloth stitch that you saw in the last little clip that I did, and this time we're going to use cloth stitch to make a snake bookmark. It takes 6 pairs of wound bobbins, which needs 1.25 meters of thread on each pair, and you need 1 pair of workers that's got 3.25 meters of thread for the workers to be effective. And I have made my workers in this yellow so it stands out nice and clearly. So I'm going to use the spot at the top there for my workers. I'm going to put those on first, and I'm going to put a twist in them. Then I'm going to load the same pin with all other 6 pairs that I have wound, and this time I've done them with a black thread so they contrast nicely, so you'll be able to see what's happening. So I'll just do that and I'll come back. So there we have 6 pairs of bobbins that are wound with black thread and 1 pair of weavers that's wound with the yellow thread. And all I'm going to do is start working across the black threads using cloth stitch and taking my weavers across. So if you recall from the last time, it is 1 to the right, 2 to the left, 1 to the right, all the way across. And when you reach the other end, you need to put a twist in the workers. 1 to the right, 2 to the left, 1 to the right, and we need a twist in the workers. I'm then going to get a pin, and I'm coming into the next available hole, which is there. And it is a little bit tight to work on, so you need a little bit of tension here to pull the workers up, and you can see it's sort of gathered up there. So go through bobbin by bobbin and just give a little bit of pressure to pull them down, and they tuck away quite neatly, as you can see. And that's your first row done. Right, we're now going to work our way back across. So we've had a twist in the workers there, and we're going to go 1 to the right, 2 to the left, 1 to the right, all the way across again. And to the other side, and a twist right over left, remember. And we'll pin that back to the next available hole, which is there. And again, pull that and a little bit of tension and go through each bobbin in turn, just to take the slack out of that. And we're on our way. I'll come back again when I've done a little bit more. Okay, so I've now brought the weave down as far as the line where it's noted for eyes. So the next part of this is to put the eyes of the snake on the 2nd and the 5th pair of passives. So I'll stop for the moment and come back to you in a moment. Okay, to put the eyes on, it's going on to the 2nd pair of passives. So that's the 1st pair, and that's my 2nd pair. I've threaded a very, very fine wire underneath one of the threads on the passive after I've passed it through the bead, and then it's looped underneath that and come back up through the bead. So now the bead is on the wire with both bits held the other side, and I can just pull that through to get the black thread to come through. If you can see that, the black thread is now through the bead. You could do this with a Lazy Susan, you could do it with all sorts of other things, but it's made a loop. I'm now going to remove the extra little bit of wire that I've used. I'm going to keep that loop open. I'm going to expand it a little bit, and the other half of this pair of passives is going to pass through the loop that I've made. It is a little bit fiddly, to say the least, but that's going to pass through that loop. And that now has placed the bead on the passive. and it could be slid up or down like that. Okay, that's just how you put the bead on. So that's on passive numbers 2 and the other passive number 5. So it's counting from the left. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'll be on this pair here. I'll come back when I've done that, and these are slid right up tight to the weave. So that's right up close to the weave there, you can see. Okay, I'll come back in a minute. The 2 eyes are now threaded onto the passives number set 2 and set 5, and I'm ready to go and carry on with my cloth stitch. I've got a twist in the weavers, and we're going back over, 1 to the right, 2 to the left, 1 to the right, and we can just carry on as normal. Twist on the end and into the next available hole, which is there, and give that a tug and pull down the passives just to get that tension there. Now these beads are quite big for this, but I thought it would be easier to see them, and so I'm going to carry on and do a few more rows, and I'll get back to you when those are done. Okay. You can see that further down the neck of the snake starts getting a little bit narrow, so you need to be a little bit careful when you're doing that, that you actually spread out your threads, and when you're pulling them down, make sure they go to the edges, they don't all bunch up in the middle. So if I've done another row like that, I've got my pin to put into the next available slot, and it's all getting a little bit tight here, so I'm going to put some tension on that, on the weavers, and I'm going to pull down each of these, but these I'm pulling rather more to this way so that it spreads the threads as evenly as is possible, and that way you get quite a tight weave there. But it makes an interesting variation with the wider parts of the snake. When you get further down the snake, there are twists involved, which I'll show you when I get there. One thing I haven't mentioned is this blue cloth, and it's good practice to keep a cloth between the pattern and your threads, and it serves various purposes, and the main one of them is to keep the whole thing clean. And if I'm running short on pattern here, all I've done is I've unpinned the cloth, and I'm going to slide it down to show the next part of the pattern, and then I'm going to pin it back into place. I'm not pinning it on the top of the lace pad, I'm pinning it to the edges and just stretching it, and this is as smooth as a selvage as we can get on. I don't know if you can see that. This part here is as smooth a selvage as possible for the cloth that goes over it. Now when we get down to this part here, let's move those out of the way, you'll see that we're starting to look at twists, so I'll come back when I've got down there and I'll show you what we need to do with that. Okay. So I've got down as far as where the twists are indicated here, and that means I'm going to be twisting my workers when I get halfway through my passives. So I'm going to work normally through 1, 2, 3 pairs of passives, and then I'm going to put 1 twist on my workers and carry on with the rest of the row as normal. I continue to do that until it comes to where it tells me to do 2, and I'll do 2 twists in the middle, and then down here, sorry about the abrupt end to that last bit, the camera cut out. Anyway, you can see now that I have come down through the different parts of the twists here. So where we've got just 1 twist, let me get a pin to show you, we've got 1 twist, you can see that it's quite narrow, and those are the 1 twists there. We'll come down to 2, it gets that little bit wider, and 3 are these here, and back to 2 twists in the middle of the weavers, and you can see that it makes quite a nice effect within the middle of the snake. And I've just now got to the bottom here, which is where I'm coming back to 0. So there are no further twists to be had until I get much further down into the next section of the tail. So I'm going to carry on and do my next rows on there. It's still got a twist on the end of the weaver, and it's the normal right, left, right. One right, two left, one right, one right, two left, one right. No twist this time when I get to the middle there, and I'm going to carry on like that and put my twist in the weaver, and then the pin into the next available hole, pull it up and make sure that these threads are spaced out as well as possible, which will give a balanced look to your snake eventually. Right, I will carry that on and come back. So we're coming to the end of our snake now, and I've just got a couple more rows to do, and I'll show you how to finish off when we get to the bottom. You'll notice that there's been another section of twists that have gone into here along this section here, and when we've got it off the cushion, when we've finished, I'll show you what the whole thing looks like. Again, it gets quite tight working down at this section, so you've got to pull these down just to stop this bunching up that you're seeing happening here. So there's my last row, and now I'm going to take my weavers and I'm going to clump all of these threads together, and I'm going to pass one of the weavers underneath. There's a twist at the end there. I'm going to pass one of the weavers underneath, and so they come up to either side. Bring them in front and twist, and it's a little bit like a shoelace knot. Tie a shoelace knot, as you can see just that. Okay, tie that round, and then because everything finishes here, you have to make sure this is really solid. So you're going to take them under again, just under and over, and you can do this a few times, and again putting a knot at the end of each crossing. Now, sometimes people braid these, sometimes the ends are plaited, sometimes they're just tied. I'm just going to tie this one for the sake of speed, and there's the knot. Now I could do another one just to be on the safe side, because if this is going to be a bookmark, it might have a little bit of pulling and tugging at various times over its life. And we'll just tighten it up and put a second knot on it to lock it down. And there we are. So I'm going to remove my working cloth. There goes the working cloth. And we now have, if I move that out of the way, we now have the bookmark. I don't know if that's not focusing very well. So I'm going to cut off the tail and take it off, take the pins off and lay it out, and you can have a look then. And there we have one finished, very simple bookmark in the form of a snake.